This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop.
Got it in me.
Stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, welcome to it. It is Monday, my friends. Thanks for stopping in. I appreciate your support. Big week for sports here in Michigan, of course. Michigan and Michigan State playing football at the Big House. Kickoff this coming Saturday at 3:30 p.m. It'll be national television coverage. And, yes, game day from ESPN is coming to town. I would expect nothing less. The Spartans were ranked second in the country here just 2 weeks ago. They've won 2 games since, but they were both close, and now they've fallen all the way to 7th. Michigan, meantime, continues to punish people, and they've risen from the depths of the unranked all the way up to number 12 in this week's poll. So a big race, and a big race to the playoffs in college football, and a big contest this weekend. We're also taking your phone calls today, 888-900-9966. Rick on the line in Michigan. Rick, welcome to it.
Good morning. I'm just laughing at myself because there's so many things that I'm just flipping out. You covered a few of them. With energy and so forth. You had somebody on here previously talking about jobs and.
Well, I lost you there, Rick.
Are you there?
Yeah, go ahead. You just dropped out for just a moment. Keep it up. Keep going. Yeah, we talk about jobs.
Okay.
We talk about energy. That was former Governor Engler here on the
jobs,
program.
but really, it sort of is disingenuous on their part because, pardon me, all the jobs basically are. I don't think they're coming back. They've made it easier to send them overseas. The type of wages people have, it's easier for them just to stay on welfare or unemployment. It really takes away the incentive for people to do anything. It's just, they talk
now,
about
hold on, Rick. Hold on right there.
It doesn't make sense for the large corporations to have the jobs in America today.
There's some truth in that. Now, hold on. Stop right there, Rick. Hold on, because here's the thing. You're right about some of these things. North American Free Trade Agreement. And I remember when I was a kid here growing up in Michigan talking about robotics and so forth and automating the assembly lines at General Motors and so forth. And General Motors said, well, that's never really going to affect the number of people we have to hire. Well, of course it is. If you have robots that do the welding and the manufacturing and the prefab and so forth, of course it's going to send people home. But you're right about something else. You're incentivizing people staying on the welfare rolls or the handout rolls. I mean, in places like Hawaii, when the average pay to be on welfare is over $50,000 a year, why would you want to go to work if you don't have any real pride or any real goals in doing anything in this world? You just stay there, and I don't know if the jobs are coming back, but there's a lot of truth to what you say, except that some jobs are coming back because America now is more competitive than it has been in some ways when it comes to cost and so forth, and there you go.
You have to lower the wages to be competitive with foreign labor. I mean, if you really look at it in that sense, it's sort of depressing. But the thing I'm trying to say is it seems as if our legislators are really corporate contractors. They act upon the money, and it's all about the money all the time. They always say it's about jobs, but then when you ask them what that would look like, I asked a guy here that was running for office, what would that look like? He says, well, I envision maybe having small businesses, mom and pop drug stores or little hardware stores. It says, oh yeah, how are they going to compete with Walmart?
Or Walgreens, or CVS,
how are they going to do that?
Well, you're not. It's almost impossible, in fact.
Pardon me?
Yeah. I said it's almost impossible, in fact. If you go to a lot of the small towns in America where Walmart has set up shop somewhere nearby, you'll find the ghost town of the business district. Now, I don't fault Walmart for being a tough competitor and making it happen, but you're right. You're right about the politicians being in line. I mean, listen, the fastest way to become a millionaire if you're not today, get elected to Congress.
Right,
and that's a fact.
exactly.
Get elected to Congress. You will be a millionaire.
Absolutely, I'm right with you. But you know this stuff about our election coming up. You know, I'm a Trump fan. Okay, are you with me?
Okay, I'm listening.
But I fear that Jeb Bush has actually got the backing of Wall Street, and really, the thing about the Bush family is they're very, very political, and they're extraordinarily wealthy. I fear that even though people are supporting Trump the way they are, that I think that the way things are heating up, that Jeb Bush is going to be paraded around the world as a senior statesman that solves problems, the age-old problem, reaction, solution. You can't make people happy until you make them sad, and things are not looking very good, and I'm not too happy about what's going on. I'm sure a lot of people aren't.
Well, Rick, I'll give you this. It was a terrific phone call, and I greatly appreciate you checking in. You covered a lot of territory there, and good stuff, and I appreciate it. I do. Thanks for listening. And that's why we put the hotline out there, the common sense hotline, we call it, and Rick hit a lot of high points there, be it energy or jobs or the incredible wealth of the Bush family and others. Don't downplay the wealth of the Clinton dynasty either. Barack Obama, like I had said, you want to become wealthy in this world, get elected to Congress. If you're not wealthy today and you can get yourself elected to Congress, if you can't figure out how to get wealthy there, you're not paying attention. The phone number here is 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. Now, to touch on one of the things that Rick mentioned there, trade deals. These trade deals that are out there, be it the North American Free Trade Deal or the new one, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, it's a very controversial agreement that involves 12 other countries, including the United States. It was signed off on Monday. Now, WikiLeaks putting out all sorts of information about this deal. TPP was negotiated in secret, and details, most of them yet to be published. It just done in secrecy completely. One chapter, according to WikiLeaks, appears to give the signing countries, referred to as parties, greater power to stop embarrassing information from going public. The treaty would give signatories the ability to curtail legal proceedings if the theft of information is detrimental to the parties' economic interest, international relations, or national defense or national security. In other words, presumably, if a trial would cause the information to spread, apparently they can now stop that from happening, is what I'm reading here. And, isn't that a little bit frightening? So that your First Amendment rights of freedom of speech could be curtailed by the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The text of the TPP's intellectual property chapter confirms advocates' warnings that this deal poses a grave threat to global freedom of expression and basic access to things like medicine and information. But the sad part is that no one should be surprised by this. It should have been obvious to anyone observing the process, where appointed government bureaucrats and monopolistic companies were given more access to the text than elected officials and journalists, that this would be the result. I mean, the people that are making money, just like Rick said, are the ones that had the input on this deal. Yeah. I like WikiLeaks a little bit more every day, and there's one reason. It is Monday here on the program. It's the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back.
The Steve Gruber Show, American values with Midwestern common sense.
Come gather round, people, wherever you roam.
All right, welcome back to the program. Appreciate your time, and we've got some important topics to cover this week, but the first order of business, of course, is what's going to happen on Saturday forthcoming. So our next guest, Congressman Mike Bishop, a good friend of the program and hear a lot. We're going to talk about the reduction in mandatory minimum sentences possible for drug felons and certain firearm offenders, but we have something more important before then. But first of all, Congressman, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. So before we get down to the important business of sentencing and so forth, I just need your input on the Michigan State football game this coming Saturday, and then we'll get on to important business.
Well,
who you picking?
I got to say that I graduated from both schools. So I undergraduated at Michigan, and I got my law degree from State. So I'm going to be a winner that day. I know that for sure. It looks like Michigan's on a roll right now, and Michigan State, if you listen to the critics, they're 0-6 right now. But they're a great team, and I got to say it's going to be a great game on Saturday.
Well, there you go. Mike Bishop, way to be the politician. I appreciate it. Stand right on that fence and make no decision. I appreciate that. All right.
Well,
All right. I have the serious matters before us today. Well, I understand that, and I appreciate that. You're introducing a bill to Congress that would reduce mandatory minimum sentences for prior drug felons, which is, a lot of people agree with that. And then for certain firearm offenders, and I want to find out what that means. But tell me about this legislation you're working on.
Well, the idea is that we want to. This country has too many people in jail and in prison, and we represent about 5% of the population on the earth, but about 25% of those incarcerated. And it really is unacceptable, and it's not only driving the costs up in terms of our budget, but it really is taking the eye off what's really important, and that's making sure that we keep incarcerated those that are violent, and not incarcerate and fill up the jails and the prisons with other offenses that aren't necessarily violent.
Well, and I think that's pretty well with a lot of people. You're a former prosecutor, correct? So, I mean, you've seen some of these things up close, probably a lot of things up close and personal that many of us would only shudder at. So, obviously, we don't want the violent folks out, but we want to, the price of doing business with prisons alone, the cost to the American people, both at the state level and the federal level, it's staggering.
It really is.
So how do we move past this? And who's going to be at the front of the line when it's time? Is it just drug offenders? Is it people involved with nonviolent offenses in general, maybe theft or burglary, things of that nature? What kind of things are you looking at?
Well, interestingly enough, the legislation does not necessarily just look at drug offenses and say those are nonviolent crimes. We do identify certain drug offenses. For example, we have an epidemic in this country when it comes to heroin, and that's particularly true. And I don't know if you realize this, but in Michigan, our prosecutors and our law enforcement are reporting that this is a real problem in Michigan. Fentanyl is another area that requires some real focus, and we're trying to do everything we can to increase the minimums on those, to ensure that we catch those that are causing most of the problems and bringing danger to the schools and to our children. So there are some drug offenses where they'll actually see an enhancement in the sentencing, but for the most part, this is focused on nonviolent offenders who have committed misdemeanor offenses, who get caught up in mandatory minimums and get trapped in the legal system and cause a cycle of incarceration within their family and within their community. So we want to address that issue, and we want to make sure that we don't get the people that are not the ones that are a threat to their families and the community.
We're on the line this morning with Congressman Mike Bishop here on the program. And all right, you said reducing mandatory minimum sentences. I don't like mandatory sentencing to begin with. I think judges are there for a reason to weigh, mitigating factors and so forth. But one of the things on here is certain firearm offenders might also have the possibility of getting out a little bit earlier. What do you mean by that? Which firearm offender? I mean, this is a sensitive subject, my point.
Yes, it is. But if you have a violent felony, an aggravated felony committed with a firearm, that is not part of our enhancements. That is not part of our reduction and our reform process. We view those as the very crimes where justice should throw the book at a criminal offender. So we're not getting in the way of those kind of offenses.
Well, and that makes sense. But so who would benefit then?
In the firearm category?
Yes, sir.
There are certain firearm offenses that are nonviolent, and that could be anywhere from maybe your permit had expired and you're carrying, giving the judge the opportunity to review the evidence on a case-by-case basis to ensure that whatever the offense is, that the penalty is not excessive or is outside of the control of the judge. As you said earlier, when it comes to mandatory minimums, the judge has no authority whatsoever to step in and use
with mandatory minimums,
discretion, his or her.
Yeah, you could put a laptop computer up on the desk. What difference would it make if it's mandatory sentencing and so forth? And why have a judge would be my point. You save a lot of money if you just want to get rid of that. I think judges are important in the process is my point. I'll give you 20 seconds for the last word, Congressman.
Yeah, no, I think this is important. As you said, I'm a former prosecutor. I believe in law and order, and I believe in protecting families. I believe that that's the primary function of government. But at the same time, we have lost our view, our path here. Instead of really taking a look at the real violent offenders and the ones that should be taken away from society and incarcerated, we have clogged the system with nonviolent offenders for the sake of showing the world that we're tough on crime. And it really is not working. We're getting recidivists and a very, very cyclical process of letting them out. They come right back in.
Taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense.
All right, well, a lot of people have been looking toward this game, but I don't think anybody expected it to be the table set quite like this. At least I certainly didn't. I thought Jim Harbaugh would have a pretty good year to get things rolling. 5-1, ranked 12th in the country. Didn't see that necessarily. 3 shutouts in a row. Didn't see that. The Spartans continue to play close football games. Continue to win. 2 weeks ago they were second in the country. Now they've fallen to 7th. Here to sort it out with me, the Dean of Sports, Tim Staudt. Tim, welcome back.
Morning, Steve.
Big weekend, of course. Michigan hanging the third zero on the board 3 weeks in a row. First time since 1980. This defense looks pretty strong. Michigan State having some trouble getting a lot of points on the board, but I don't underestimate them come next Saturday. How are you looking at it today?
Well, I think if you go by what you've seen the last few weeks, it's probably a pretty exciting week for Michigan fans. I think it's two reasons it's a bigger week for Michigan fans than it has been in years. Number one, Michigan fans have a coach they believe in. And number two, they get a home game, both of which I think are tremendously significant moving forward from the state of Michigan's program. I have no real idea who's going to win the game on Saturday. I fully understand why Michigan's favored. I was dead wrong in a different way on Michigan at the start of the year, maybe. I had them 9-3. Nobody else had them close to that, and they may be better than that, although they still could, as you know, come back a little bit. I think one thing that's hard to determine about this game is, what I always go by, is measuring the caliber of the competition that teams have legitimately played. And that becomes, to me, more of a mystery for Michigan State, because I think Michigan State has had a tremendously advantageous schedule to get to 6-0 and play, by its own standards, mediocre doing it. Now, the big question is, in an atmosphere like this coming up on Saturday, how's Michigan going to handle it, and how's Michigan State going to handle it? And I think that's the intrigue of the game.
I think it is. And you talk about those some of the non-conference matchups. Of course, the Oregon game with Michigan State, was put up there as a big test for the Spartans. Now Oregon's fallen out of the top 25. They're gone. Utah, meanwhile, might look like a more impressive loss for Michigan, and the one touchdown loss to Utah in some polls. What are they up to, 4th now? Undefeated and 4th in the country.
Well, I think State got Oregon, without demeaning State, I think State got Oregon at a tremendous time. First of all, Mariota was gone. He's a Heisman guy. He's starting in the NFL as a rookie. You take that guy out and put a junior college quarterback in there, you expect that they're going to still be... I think what skewed this whole thing up for everybody, it does every year, is the preseason rankings. Let's face it, Oregon in the first game of the season should have sounded a warning shot across the bow when it gave up 42 points at home to Eastern Washington. Okay, but it came in here ranked, number 7, 5, whatever they were. But it looked like at the time, like Michigan State struggled to score on Oregon to get to 31. And I don't look. That's the best win. Okay, that's Michigan State's best win, and it was in a heightened atmosphere. And you can argue that Oregon at the time thought it was maybe that good. But the reality of it is today, where is Oregon going to finish in the Pac-12? Of the 12 teams in that league, where would Oregon rank today? They couldn't beat a weak Washington State team at home. So if you go by the comparisons and all that, obviously you can make a case here for Michigan simply because Utah's undefeated and ranked fifth. And Michigan gave Utah arguably its hardest game of the season, or certainly one of the top two. I understand, as I say, why Michigan is where it is today. I did not think, obviously, Michigan's defense was going to be what it is. But what Michigan has done to me, Steve, is not necessarily that the players are better players. I thought Michigan had good players last year and the year before. What I don't think Michigan has ever had was a solid coaching staff that everybody believed in, and a culture down there that losing is totally unacceptable, and a culture that we're Michigan, we win. I don't think they've had that for 7 years. And I don't know where all those players are with it now, but it looks like they've improved with that culture over yesteryear, if you agree with that.
Well, yeah, losing is unacceptable. That's exactly right. So the attitude, I mean, and you're right, Michigan has the bodies, apparently, because we're seeing this defense excel. DJ Durkin, putting together, like I said, 3 goose eggs in a row, first time since 1980. It's been a long time, and this defense is just destroying people.
Well, he's going to have his, depending on how this, look, we got half the season to play yet. There's a lot, now already a lot's happened. We've lost head coaches in the Big Ten. We've lost them elsewhere. We've had a scramble of the rankings, and that's with weak schedules for everybody for the most part. And look at how everything is scrambled up. Now you're in conference play, and you're going to see, and we haven't even got to all the injuries yet that everybody's going to suffer. And I think that's another significant part for Michigan State. I was at the Rutgers game on Saturday night, and I was dumbfounded at how, for all this hype about Michigan State's offensive line, Rutgers' defense had them off balance running the ball all night long, and now Madre London is hurt. I mean, you add all this up, and if you're a Michigan fan, you're pretty excited. Now, in football, though, weird things happen week to week, and I don't think Michigan State's going down there to lose either. So,
no.
And they haven't.
So what about Jack Allen? You talk about that offensive line. It'll be another new configuration for the offensive line for Michigan State, which is key against a defense that is performing very well right now. Jack Allen, your All-American center. I mean, this guy is the heart of the whole deal. Is he going to be there or not?
Well, they don't talk about injuries unless they're season-ending injuries, and I don't think you ever want to put any emphasis on these depth charts this week because they won't tell you much. I mean, I saw a lot of these guys hobbling around on the sideline on Saturday night, and I think Cody Keeler was playing him when he was banged up in the first place, and Rutgers got past him, on more than one occasion just because I don't think he was playing healthy at all. I don't know where all that's going to lead. I think Michigan State is going to have regardless of who wins the game, I think it's going to have to do it through the air. And that isn't going to be easy to do because I think Peppers is going to be by far the best defensive back State will have seen all season. Rutgers couldn't stop anybody. I do give State's receivers, they played, I thought, pretty well Saturday. They made a couple of big catches in that game that if they don't make, Rutgers could have won the game. And look, you're talking about two of the weakest teams in the Big Ten in the last 2 weeks. The alarming game to me for Michigan State is Purdue. Purdue's as weak a team as there is, and State had to sweat it out at the end to win that game without nearly as many guys injured. They were playing at home at the time. Now, the question obviously becomes, how are you going to do it this way? They've never been an underdog this season. Now they're an underdog. So how is that going to change them? A lot of these Michigan State players have never played in Ann Arbor. So how are they going to react when they get down there in a hostile atmosphere like that? I mean, I think these are all questions that'll be fun to talk about this week.
Tim Staudt, always a pleasure, my friend.
Talk to you soon, Steve.
All righty, well. Headed towards the finish line now. One more thing of interest for you. Michigan Attorney General Bill Schuette is the latest high-profile politician in the state to say, let the voters decide on the hot-button issue of legalizing marijuana. Schuette's latest comments on pot are a long way from the position he espoused just last year when he said, among other things, and I quote, "We should not go down this road of legalizing drugs. It exposes young kids, children, to even more potent drug use, and I think that's not good for them in the future." Michigan Attorney Michael Corman wrote this about the AG and his resistance to the legalization of marijuana for medical or recreational purposes. Since he was elected in 2010, Schuette has issued 14 opinions, 4 of which have been about medical marijuana. Aside from issuing the opinions, all of which have been anti-medical marijuana, Schuette has hosted seminars for law enforcement across the state. When my office inquired whether I could sit in on one, I was told they were for police and local government officials only. At these seminars, Schuette instructed officers to arrest patients, confiscate any medical marijuana, and let the courts decide whether crime had been committed. The AG went on further to explain that if a police officer returned the seized cannabis to the patient or caregiver, they themselves could be charged with a felony offense of delivery of a Schedule I narcotic. This, however, is the old Bill Schuette. The new Bill Schuette says the voters should weigh in on the matter. Appearing on WKAR-TV, PBS in Michigan State, he said, I personally don't think we need to put more drugs in the hands of kids. Families have enough trouble as it is, but let the people decide. Let the people decide, he said. And then added, I think in the end, recreational marijuana will be a ballot initiative, and I think citizens ought to vote on this. We will see if it's just a smokescreen or a new path for a Republican. Many people, including myself, see as a likely contender to be the next governor here in Michigan. Bill Schuette's comments have been long and strong, but here you go. He's taking a different track. This part of the program has been brought to you by Consumers Mutual Insurance. Consumers Mutual is a co-op. It's a different sort of insurance company. It's the company I chose for myself and my family from all the confusion out there, and there is plenty. That's going to do it for this Monday edition of the Steve Gruber Show. I greatly appreciate your support. Check us out on Facebook, The Steve Gruber Show, and SteveGruber.com to check out podcasts, listen live, and so much more. Have a great Monday, everybody. We'll talk tomorrow.